This is my 12.4 diet plan assignment. So my athlete was a 110 metre hurdlist. They're 25 years old, weighs 75 kilos, 180 centimetres tall, and a male. So their BMI came out at around 23 on the BMI chart, and that's within the healthy category, so I chose to leave his weight alone. And so for this diet plan, I'll be maintaining his weight. In terms of the training that he would be doing for his event, so sprint training worked out at 20 mets, weight training 5, flexibility 2.5, and circuit training was 8. So then later on in the diet plan, you'll see the length of the training sessions and how many calories that results in. But based off his current weight and height and stuff like that, his BMR is currently 1,823.5, which you will see within the day-to-day diet plans. So for the first day, in terms of percentages, it was roughly 20% protein, 50% carbs, and 30% fats. The calorific intake was very high due to the demands of the sprint training and circuit training. As you can see, the mets have been put into the training column. For the breakfast, went for quite high calories before the most intense training sessions to keep them feeling full for longer. And the fruit within this contains vitamins and minerals such as vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. Magnesium and vitamin C are best for the muscles to keep. Magnesium keeps muscles relaxed or can control the circulation and contractions of muscles. Vitamin C is good in terms of post-workout and recovery and like healing the muscles. And calcium is good for bone strength and tendons, which there will be a lot of stress on that during the workout. So then there's a snack to keep them going through their training session. It's not too heavy and just gives them a burst of energy and adds to the overall calorific intake of the day. And later on there's another snack, potassium from bananas can again help with muscles and protein repairing. The lunch is quite high in protein and carbs, and again it's lots of calories to make up the energy balance of the day. The dinner is quite repetitive on this day, but again it's very high in proteins, which is what you want right now. And then later on again, almonds for one of the snacks is quite high in fats and calories again, just to make up the extra calorie deficit that I was currently in when I was making the thing. So this totals of 4,982 calories, which is just 30 under their BMR and METs for this day, so it's fairly good overall. But I haven't actually introduced any sports drinks yet. I've kept everything quite natural in terms of what they're drinking, apart from the protein shake they have earlier on, but other than that everything's quite natural, and I try to keep it like that for the first week at least. So day 2 is roughly 30% proteins, 30% carbs, and 40% fats. High demands in terms of the calorific intake, again mainly down to the sprint training and weight training. It totals of 5,432 calories, which is 25 calories over what their BMR and METs should come to for today. So I've decided to keep the breakfast quite similar. But I did add a protein shake because of the weight training they'll be doing later. And for today, I added in a pre-workout. You can see at 8:30 in the morning, and that was half an hour before their weight training would begin, because that was the recommendation for using shakes like that. And yeah, it's got things such as vitamin C in and caffeine to kind of give them the extra lift before they start their workout and to give them enough energy to keep going. But then because it is quite an intense training session of 90 minutes, I've given them an energy and caffeine gel halfway through, which did also help contribute to calorie intake for the day. The lunch is quite high in protein to help with repairing muscles after the weight training session that they would have had. And again, all the snacks for today, I've tried to keep them quite healthy in terms of using unsaturated fats and try to get as much protein in as possible. The dinner for today at 5 o'clock is quite high in proteins again, to make up for the weight training session they'll be doing. So day 3, there's roughly 50% protein, 30% carbs, and 20% fats. It's got a total of 5,092 calories, which is 79 over their BMR and METs for the day. For this day in particular, there was a lot of protein in their dinner, which I just thought proteins overall for this person is going to be quite good because obviously protein leads to muscle mass, and muscle mass can lead to producing more force and higher power. And for an event such as hurdling, which is more or less a sprint, you need to generate as much power as possible and others get a quicker time. So I thought proteins were quite key in this diet plan. So yeah. And then one of the snacks I put in at 6 o'clock for today was the trail mix, which is like nuts and chocolate, and that was mainly just to get the calories up, and it's also high in magnesium, so again helps with the muscles, making sure you can reduce cramp and stuff, which was just before their sprint training session they'd be having later on, so you don't want to be cramping up for that. Day 4, this day is roughly 30% proteins, 40% carbs, 30% fats. It's quite low in calorific demands today because they're less active haven't got the sprint training today, and that's to try and reduce any injuries for them as well. So it totals of 3,250 calories, which was just under 9 calories over. Everything's there's not as many snacks today because obviously the calorific demand's lower, and I included the pre-workout again before the weight training sessions just to try and make the most out of the training session for them. Day 5, this day is roughly 50% proteins, 50% carbs and 50% fats. Again, this day is quite high in terms of the calorific demands because of the sprint training, which takes up the majority of it really. Throughout the week I've tried to keep the breakfast quite similar because of the volume of training they'll be doing. They want to make sure they're full for a long time, and I thought it was quite a standard breakfast really. It's got a kind of a combination of everything, like proteins, carbs and fats, and usually a bit of fruit in there as well, and didn't want to cause any upset by changing it every single day. Again, used an energy and caffeine gel during their sprint training sessions to give them that extra bit of oomph because it's still quite early in the morning as well. And again today there's a fair amount of snacking on different nuts, so the trail mix and the almonds later on in the evening was again to try and make up the calories, because obviously it's a very high amount and it can be quite hard to contain that all in the meals. So snacks such as nuts are very high in calories due to the fat content. So I chose to snack on those as opposed to snacking on things like junk food, which was very high in calories too, but obviously didn't have as much nutritional value for them. So day 6, this day was roughly 30% proteins, 50% carbs and 20% fats. As this is one of the lower calorific demanding days because it's less active, because I thought for a Saturday they've had 5 days of very intense training, so training 3 times a day, so I'd take it down to just twice a day instead. But yeah, again, kept the breakfast very similar to I have every other day. Chose a new juice for this day, which was the orange and mango juice, which was quite high in vitamin C, which was again good for recovery and healing. That was it really. Day 7, so this is pretty much their rest day, but obviously there's still some activity because they're an elite athlete. So this day was roughly 20% proteins, 50% carbs and 30% fats. Less demanding in terms of calories because it was the rest day. Had a total of 2,526, which was actually 123 under their BMR and METs for the day. So again, the breakfast was more or less the same for today. Kind of a fairly light lunch, but it was quite high in carbs really, should have been a bit lower. And then for their dinner, I kind of gave them like a day off really, in terms of being as healthy as possible, so just kind of give them like a standard roast dinner and giving them a dessert. But I think it's okay because it's kind of moderated and they don't go around eating stuff like that all the time. It's just a one-off thing. So day 8, this was pretty much the same as day 1. So yeah, a total of 5,122 calories, which was 109 over their BMR and METs. However, the one difference I did make now is that I started introducing sports drinks into the diet, because at first I wanted to try and kind of, I guess, make them do as much of the hard work as possible and not give them too much help, because then it kind of makes the second week, as we're getting closer to the competition, like a bit easier for them within their training too. So I started introducing sports drinks at this point. So yeah, which is going to help to raise their electrolytes, so have things like potassium in them. Yeah. Day 9, this day was again the same as day 2 of the first week. So it was 5,432 calories, which was 25 over. Yeah, there's nothing really changed from the first week here. Day 10, so this day was 50% proteins, 30% carbs and 20% fats. Had a total of 5,092 calories, which was 79 calories over the BMR and METs. And yeah, this one again was the same as the first week. I tried to just add as much variation as I could day to day within the first week, so that then when it comes to repeating the first few days in the second week, it wouldn't feel so tedious, because they've had so much variation within the first week. So this day is roughly 40% protein, 40% carbs, 20% fats. This was lower in calorific demands because we're getting closer to the event, so slightly less high intensity training, because obviously we want to avoid injuries. And I tried to put quite a lot of proteins into this day, because where we're getting closer to the thing, we want to make sure all the muscles are healing properly, to give us the best chance possible within the competition. Day 12, so roughly 20% protein, 50% carbs and 30% fats. Slightly higher because of the sprint training, but chose to leave it as 2 training sessions because we're getting so close to the competition. So this was 4,234 calories, which was 148 under their BMR METs. So we changed up a tiny bit today with the lunch, I think it was. So tried adding cranberry juice and kidney beans into it as well, so you could get some potassium from the kidney beans. And again, we've incorporated the sports drinks today to up their electrolytes. So day 13, obviously day before the competition, roughly 45% protein, 45% carbs and 10% fats. So this was much lower in calorific demands because the event's tomorrow and you don't want to cause any injuries now, so done a lot of focus on flexibility instead to try and just help aid the muscles. And yeah, using whey protein after the flexibility session, so try and make sure the muscles are healing and building upon themselves, because the whey protein used provide all the essential amino acids, so obviously that's going to help repair and restore any muscle damage. So yeah, that was the only real reason for that. So day 14 is the competition day, obviously. So this day was roughly 30% protein, 55% carbs and 15% fats. It's lower in calorific demands today because it's the day of the event, and so there's no real training beforehand. It's just some flexibility work, which is very low in the METs. So yeah, for this day specifically, we had breakfast quite early and then kept it quite similar to the rest of the days, as to make sure there wasn't any upset there with their bodies not agreeing with the breakfast that I've given them. So that gives it like about 4 hours or so before the competition starts, just to make sure it's not sitting in them or gonna stop them from performing as well as they could. So the METs for the actual competition were quite low as well, because it's quite it's a very short duration event. just before the event, giving them energy and caffeine gel, as well as a sports drink, to give them that extra boost of sugar beforehand, to try and wake them up a bit and give them as much energy as possible before they go on. And then for the rest of the day, it's kind of quite basic, really, just scrambled eggs on toast, and then rice, chicken and peas for dinner. And there's not a lot of snacking today because of how low the calories are. There was a total of 2,239, which was still 192 calories over their BMR and METs today. So overall, with the diet plan I've provided, I tried to stay quite consistent with the timings of the food, in order to try and get their body used to a routine and knowing how long a certain meal is going to last them in terms of the training they're doing and the volume and intensity of it. So knowing that if they're just doing flexibility, then it's alright for them to eat slightly larger meals beforehand because it's not going to affect them too much, whereas if they eat a large meal before they go on to do sprint training, it's probably going to cause a bit of upset with them. So some of the vitamins and minerals that are incorporated into this diet, so things like magnesium, vitamin C. There was some vitamin B in there, which was used to metabolize foods and produce energy, which was quite similar to what phosphorus does, which is again converting carbs and fats into useful energy. That also synthesizes proteins. And then you've got your ones like vitamin D, calcium, and vitamin C for kind of like bones, bone strength, tendons, things like that, and which obviously quite big for a sprinter because they're putting a lot of force down through their connective tissues and joints, so you want to make sure that's as strong as possible. And the timings of things like the supplements, so the pre-workouts, making sure it was half an hour before, and then as we got closer to the competition day, the other whey protein shakes, having them within a half-hour period after their workout to try and make the most of them and get the best effect out of them possible. Next time, if I was to do a diet plan, I'd be a lot stricter in terms of the percentage of fat, carbs and proteins of each day. So ideally, I think I would want it as 40% proteins, 30% carbs and 30% fats, which hasn't been too far off from some of the days, but on the whole, I think it could be more accurate because, as I mentioned earlier, I think protein is one of the most important things going for a sprinter, because they need the muscle mass to produce the force and the power that they need to get the fastest start and win in the races. And fat is a much better fuel source than carbohydrates in terms of the amount of energy you're getting. So for their training, they're best to be using fats. However, obviously they do need the carbohydrates because their actual event itself is so short. They're not really going to have a chance to burn into their fats. That the fat is more for the training as opposed to the actual competing, which is where the carbs will come into it. Again, next time I think as well, I would add in more vitamins and minerals in terms of supplementation, because I found it quite difficult managing to find out which specific vitamins and supplements come from which foods, and I don't think they got the correct ones all the time, so there was probably a bit of a deficiency there. And where I was then repeating days, that means they're getting deficiencies on multiple days, which isn't good enough. And so it could be more convenient to add in a few vitamins and mineral supplements in cases where it's just too complicated to get those into the quantities that are needed. Also, maybe using sports drinks for longer, because I only incorporated them into the second week of the training, because at first I didn't really think of it too much. It was kind of more of an afterthought, but then I also thought that the first week was kind of everything was a lot more natural in terms of the foods used, and there wasn't too much supplements used, whereas as we got closer to the competition and the training started to decrease, I started using more supplements and stuff in terms of making sure that their body is recovered and stuff for the next training session and the competition.